Hardest thing about medical school? I guess it will. You know, it's pretty easy. No. Probably the amount of information that you get. It literally, like, you may have heard this, but it's like a fire hydrant. It's just a lot of information that's not too difficult, but it's a lot.
Basically, they hit you with a lot of the stuff you learn in undergrad's in a lot more depth than it is here. But the fact is, you hit it like skimming across the top at 100 miles an hour, and everything you learned in your 4 years, you're going to learn in a semester here, like 2 months or something like that. Anatomy was the worst 11 weeks of my life. Absolutely hated it, but you live through it.
Hardest thing about medical school is adjusting to how much time medical school requires. You'll spend a solid 10 hours every day going to class, studying, etc., etc. And it's just a lot to adjust to from going from summer right into anatomy.
The hardest thing was, I think, kind of adjusting to kind of being thrown into it and having to adjust to that. Because I'm used to like study a couple of days before the exam, fine, don't worry about it. This was like constant on time, and so that was a little bit of a rough patch.
I think the hardest thing about medical school is probably being intentional about developing different interests outside of medicine, and whether that be playing the piano or enjoying sports or reading or something like that. It takes a lot to just continue to do things that you really like to do. I guess it's just balance.
The thing about medical school so far is realizing kind of that there's so much information that, you know, when you first start, you're like, oh, medicine's bad, but you can kind of get around it. Medicine is really complicated. More than that, people are really complicated. And the idea that if you get into the wards and, you know, you try to go to volunteer or shadow at the ER or whatever, kind of understanding that you're going to be responsible for so many different things in so many ways that people can hurt themselves, it's astounding. So really trying not to get bogged down and trying to focus on your core material is the hardest thing for me, at least. I get really scatterbrained sometimes, and you kind of just have to focus on what you need to do. And that's it, yeah. Try to not to get overwhelmed the first year. You have plenty of time for that later on.
The hardest thing about medical school is, I guess, balancing your time. You may not have time to do all the fun things you like to do when you're studying, and you have to sacrifice some time hanging out with friends for your studies. And they have to sacrifice some gym time for your studies or playing sports or whatever you like to do.
And then what is the most...
The amount that you feel like you need to study. It's just annoying.
I agree.
Because you don't need to study that much.
What?
Just remember, like, everybody else, there's been a million people that did it before you. So regardless of how bad your life sucks, their life sucked just as much. And regardless of how bad you think your life might suck, there's a lot of people that tried to get to where you are and they didn't make it. And there's a lot of people out there that their lives really suck. So just suck it up and keep going.
Say something.